Okay, so in the early 70s, new Hollywood was emerging with Spielberg, with Scorsese. A lot of the college kids were making their own films. The old movie production system was kind of falling apart. And the death struggle to maintain superiority is what you do. Well, you do the old school is bigger the budget, bigger the return. So, of course, they're going to do something big scale, big scope.
Definitely.
And that's how these disaster movies emerge from the old Hollywood system.
Yeah, and you get someone like Irwin Allen, who is almost become synonymous with disaster films, even though he didn't do that many of them.
No.
He's still kind of like the father of the modern disaster movie. Gets an opportunity. Nobody wants to spend a lot of money because the smaller films, films like The Graduate, are the ones that are like winning.
Right,
the Oscars
Godfather,
winning at the box office.
Yeah.
So he took the opportunity to go big or go home, and almost gambled with his career, really, on the film we're talking about today, the Poseidon Adventure, which was a first-time watch for me. I've seen the remake. I've not seen the original. So
it's not the first blockbuster disaster movie, but it is definitely wasn't the first disaster movie, but it was the first blockbuster disaster movie.
Absolutely. So I'm excited to break this down. Hopefully, we don't end up upside down and underwater.
I'm Nick from St. Paul Filmcast.
I'm Kyle Goethe from GoFromReviews.com. Welcome to Disaster Movie Month. We're talking classic disaster movies, really breaking it down.
We're so excited we can't even talk straight.
I think this is such an interesting theme. I'm excited to talk about these ones, and I've actually we've kind of selected a couple of our disaster films for the theme, and many of them are ones I haven't experienced for the first time. And as I mentioned in our opening, I've seen Poseidon from Wolfgang Peterson,
the 2006,
but I have not seen the original film that it was based on. Ended up actually having 2 copies of it. Isn't that weird enough?
Oh my God, the captain of the ship is your buddy.
And Leslie Nielsen, oh my God, the entire first 30 minutes, I'm like, I hope he makes it.
So you know it's going to be a disaster. He's in charge, right?
Yeah, exactly.
He knows how to sail a ship. He doesn't know how to fly a plane.
Yeah.
So yes, the disaster formula is a big natural event is going to cascade and cause problems, and then you have small little subplots navigate and how they're going to resolve the issue, overcome their petty little problems, and save the day.
Exactly. And so for this one, of course, if you don't know the plot, it's actually, I think the plot is more well known because of the remake than it is actually based on this initial film.
It's a maiden voyage.
And that is that this film is about the Poseidon, which is a big cruise liner, one of those like Titanic level cruise liners where it's thought to be like, impervious to danger. And
it's going to Greece, of course.
Eve, people are all celebrating and excited and everything like that. And then all of a sudden, the captain sees a gigantic, unseen wave is heading for them. It capsizes the ship, and then we have to follow a group of passengers as they try to work their way to the bottom of the ship, which is actually up at the top.
So it goes upside down,
so that they can get out. It's very much, it kind of feels at times like a slasher movie.
It does.
Kind of get picked off. But I also love these kinds of movies that have this element of like everyone can serve a purpose in the group. Like it's fun to watch each one of them get an opportunity to shine.
So one of the formulas for disaster movies is you start a big scope, you go to little details of subplots, and then you have a big gathering, and then the event, and then you got to solve the problem. So a lot of the stuff that we see from the Poseidon Adventure gets played out in the next feature disaster films. Mm-hmm. I think Gene Hackman and Ernest Borgnine were hired simply to outshout each other for this movie.
I think once you get one, you got to get the other. Right. It's that they both have differing opinions, and that's kind of the terrifying thing about the film is that you're following Reverend Scott, played by Gene Hackman.
Yeah, he's a reverend. This is like he's not a bad guy.
You're following him through this journey, but like he doesn't have a whole lot of experience escaping ships. Like, what if he's wrong? It's that whole question that he keeps getting asked, and Borgnine doesn't seem to have a whole lot of answers. Of course, he plays Mike Rogo, who's
ex-cop.
Yeah, an ex-cop, and he's just trying to figure out the right way too, but he also doesn't really have the necessity that Reverend Scott has. And we know this going into the film. What I actually really love about this movie is the first 30 minutes gives you a great setup for many of the different characters we're going to experience, including some that don't even make it out of that initial room. And I also like that the film begins with that title card that says, on New Year's Eve, the Poseidon capsized, sunk. Here are the survivor stories. It tells you from the get-go how this movie is going to play out. So that first 30 minutes feels like a ticking time bomb. It feels more tense than a lot of other elements in a normal film, but you're getting to meet all the characters. It reminded me of more recent films like John Wick Chapter 3, where like that first 20 minutes almost feels more tense than the rest of the film because you have that ticking time bomb element.
Right.
Works really well in this movie.
Yeah, so you're like, you anticipate, you know it's going to happen. You don't want to get too invested with some of the characters because, you know, maybe some of them are not going to survive.
But even knowing that too, you don't know which of the characters are going to make it out of the group, the one that we're following, because we know that there are survivors. So we know most likely at least 2 people. But like, what does that mean for them? How are they going to get out? And this film rollicks along once that inciting incident takes place.
That's the one thing. If you've never seen it before, and if you watch it, it actually goes pretty fast. They get right to it very quickly. Another trope of disaster film movies is you get a blend of new actors. Gene Hackman's probably considered new at this time, and old actors like Ernest Borgnine and Shelley Winters. So you get a lot of them. That's another formula. You get mixed with old classic film and new actors.
Well, and that was another thing too, is Alan was working with a minimum budget for a bigger kind of movie like this. And one of the ways that you can save some money is get some of those people that have had heydays, maybe don't have them as much anymore. Right. And so a lot of these performers are people that were big a few years earlier, and this was kind of like bringing them back in. And that way, like, he was kind of operating on a Tarantino-esque thing, where it's like, I'm going to pick someone that was big, and I'm going to like reinvigorate them.
Yeah,
so
like you were like Lawrence Stern. Yeah.
Whereas Gene Hackman was kind of like the outlier in this sense, where that he was becoming big because the French Connection, you know, just kind of exploded with him. He was almost like the one star that was a current star that was really placed on film. Everybody else, I mean, even just Roddy McDowall, I had always known from Planet of the Apes, but of course he's not even the same guy because you can't see the actual face.
And he's the one. Is he the one on top? He's the one on top. Hey, I'll come down there. No, let's go up to you. Let's go up to you, and then of course the Christmas tree. Perfect.
That's such a great set piece. Like, it is a real, and so the entire 70s. Time you're wondering like, how is it gonna play in? And then when it starts to play in, you're like, how is it gonna play out? Like, you know, how is the whole thing gonna fall apart? The actual flipping itself is an amazing sequence when you realize how low the budget was for this movie, and it actually looks pretty solid. I thought most of that flipping,
and you got to make it upside down.
That's the thing. I thought most of that was going to be done like just like from the reactions of like like people like shaking around. They show the flipping of the ship, and I thought it was a really well done sequence that actually didn't age too poorly.
Keep it poorly. One of the funny things, of course, another trope of disaster movies, there's a little bit of comedy in it, and though I think the kid is the funniest bit about the movie.
His interactions with Borgnine are my favorite.
Hey kid, let me go.
Where like he's getting things right because he's the nerdy kid who really likes the ship and he wants to learn everything he can, and he's like his clashes are better than Hackman's and Borgnine's.
So it's a little bit of the little kid knows a little bit better, and I think they use that a little bit of from Airplane.
I think that was made fun of Airplane.
Making fun of it, from this movie. The kid knows better when we listen to the kid, you know. And the funny, I love, this is a multiple watch for me, but I get a joy of how the gradual dirtier they get. You know, clean, and eventually by half an hour in, they're all already, I got grease all over their face. Well, perfectly placed grease, right?
Well, you got to look good if you're going to be escaping. You know, you might have camera crews, so you got to kind of like make sure that the grease is working for you. So the film actually was nominated for a number of Academy Awards.
That's right.
It actually won 2. It won a Special Achievement Award for kind of like its contributions to the film landscape, and Best Original Song, which I didn't realize There's Got to Be a Morning After is an original song for the film. It also was nominated. It was nominated for Best Actress in a Supporting Role for Shelley Winters, Best Cinematography, Best Art Direction, Best Costume Design, Sound, Film Editing, and Best Music Original Score. We got to talk about the score. John Williams knocking it out of the park with the score.
John Williams.
What's interesting to me is how much of the score was evocative of me, again, being a first-time watch of another disaster film that came 2 decades later. I felt the score actually invoked a lot of what we'd later see in Independence Day. There was a little bit less of the bombastic, which is interesting because it's Williams. But in Independence Day, we got that dread-inducing, like, dun, dun, you know. That's kind of what I felt with that, was John Williams was playing up to the danger and the dread really well in this movie.
So we talk about the disaster movies kind of like in the 70s, a little time capsule, but it didn't really go away. It comes back in waves. It came back out heavily in the 90s.
Yeah, and we have directors that actually made their careers on disaster films.
Like Michael Bay, right? But yeah, it's just a little pocket area, but it never really, like we talk about noirs, it didn't really go away. But there's a certain capsule where you can say it's a noir film, you know, from like the 40 to 55. Those are the wars. Well, disaster movies, that's like 70 to about 78.
Yeah.
And then it comes back. But yeah, it never really went away.
No, it's almost like differing subgenres of horror, where you get like slashers for a few years, and you get ghost stories for a few years, and then you get, like nowadays, you get some of the torture porn, and then you go back to like classic, which I think we're right now in like the horror landscape in like a classic 70s style.
Very much so, right.
Inspiration. I think that's the kind of thing is that just the disasters themselves tend to change. In the 70s, it was a lot more like not I want to say man-made disasters, but like disasters of like you're stuck here and you've got to get out. Right. Whereas in the 90s, a lot of it was kind of based around more like aliens or monster disaster films. 2000s, we get some of our climate change crises ones, things like The Day After Tomorrow. And then, of course, in the 2010s, we get apocalypse ones like 2012. Like Roland Emmerich, again, like continued to rock out these like amazing disaster movies, or even like not great ones that were still enjoyable.
So a lot of things that get lost with disaster movies is just throw, big production actors at it. But here we're trying to establish Poseidon Adventure. I took great care with this sets and the writing of it. Thanks to the journey, you believe what they're going through. And that kind of gets lost as you just go through the factory of just making disaster movie, big explosions, cars, and everything, where you lose what, as the essence, what we enjoy is, big scope, sets, actors, yeah.
Well, the film has 2 credited co-writers there. Wendell Mays was brought in to kind of like craft the story itself. Okay. And then you also get a lot of care taken when Ronald Neame took over production on the film, because he's known for a lot of his more like talky, small films, and he was brought in that way because the studio wanted someone who could care for the characters. Yeah. And so when Neame was brought in, he hired Sterling Siliphant, who's known for Village of the Damned and a bunch of other like character-driven, dialogue-driven
Well, you can see where his input.
And he was able to get a lot more character chugging out of that time limit as well, because the film runs under 2 hours, and again, you said it moves pretty fast. They take some pretty good care to make sure that each of the people on the journey is a character. They don't get a ton of time. Some of them especially don't get a lot, but like most of the characters on this journey, you know who they are as characters, and the recognizable faces, people that you like, people you want to see survive.
But you get like when the introduction at the dinner table, and you have sitting dinner with some strangers, and they talked about, like Shelley Lynch's character is disappointed. Oh, you're not married. That's so sad to me, right? Yeah. You're like, I have a good life, and so you understand how her necessity. She's almost codependent person.
Yeah. Although we got to ask the question: if she's criticizing the fact that he's not married, and he says, "I'm too busy," how'd you get on a ship? But besides that, I do agree with you. Yeah, he's like, I don't have the time for relationships, and it's like, how do you have time to cruise, buddy?
Well, you did like Leo and Titanic, just stole away, right? Yeah,
took a weekend. Right. But yeah, I like that. And again, feeling the film cruise doesn't take away from that first 30 minutes where you do get so much character building, and it really makes you want to see people survive. And in fact, not just because Leslie Nielsen is like one of my favorite comic actors, but when he's in the film and he's the captain, you're pretty sure early on he's not going to be part of that crew. No. But the entire time I felt myself interested in him, wanting to see what happened. And when that inciting incident takes place, and it's like horrifying to realize like there's a wave coming we didn't see, and that flip taking place, you care about so many of these smaller characters. Yeah. And when they start getting picked off, and even the 2 priests, one of my little faults in the film, I don't really think that I bought Gene Hackman as a reverend.
No, I think it's just a way to be loud.
I don't feel like they really hit him as a reverend until the very end of the film. Like, there's so much of the movie where like you could have just forgotten he was a reverend, and they don't really hit it in the same way. His character is very much similar to like Mel Gibson in Signs, where he's like kind of he's challenged in his faith, and throughout the film he's continually pushed down by it. Until he has that moment.
You watch Gene Hackman, you almost think, is he a con artist?
Yeah, he's not
really passionate about it. It's like, is he a schemer and he's going to get called out? I remember multiple times watching this, like, I think he's a con artist.
Yeah.
That's right.
And thinking back on the film, the only scene then that didn't work in that first 30 minutes was his sermon, because it feels a little on the nose, where he's talking about God wants people who fight for themselves and people who do the work for themselves. And like, it's a respectable notion, but he's also basically saying like, stop asking him for help, do something. And I thought there's more to it than that, and they never really hit anywhere with it.
No, I think it's supposed to be an overall point of the movie. Yeah, I think it emphasized his character a little bit better.
Yeah, it's an important scene because it does make his arc through most of the film make more sense. I just don't know if it was successful enough. But he's, again, like a trustworthy leader that you follow him regardless.
Man, I miss turtlenecks.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of Gene Hackman pulled a turtleneck
I'm
out.
okay with it.
There's a, in the 70s, we loved that ugly, ugly green and ugly orange. We put a lot in that. Was one of them wearing that ugly orange turtleneck. That was, it's hard. It's hard. You watch her the entire time. It's like the girl in red in Schindler's List. But the girl in orange turtleneck, you're like, there she is, yeah.
Yeah. That's fair, yeah. Well, and I like, I like that the kids come into it with that sensibility. I liked Shelley Winter and Jack Albertson, who is, of course, later famous on for Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
That's right.
There's just so many, like, character actors. And in a film where the biggest character is the ship, it's kind of okay to denigrate a lot of, like, energy to character actors, because you're not going to get time with... I mean, the film's got, like, 15 main characters that we're, like, jumping around with. You don't get time to make any one of them, like, a major, like, focus of the film. You got to give them what you can.
Yeah, and you got to learn how to swim.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, because I'm not great at swimming.
No, neither. That's why we're filming on land.
That's why we're not filming at sea. My mother was not a great swimmer, so she forced me into swimming lessons at a young age because she wanted me to not die by drowning, and it ended up just making me more afraid of swimming.
This sounds familiar.
Yeah. So basically, all those underwater scenes, that's my biggest fear in any of these films. Like, I think the same thing when I watched that last Alien movie where they're all doing the swimming part, and then you realize the aliens can swim, and you're like, oh god, why?
No.
Anytime you're put underwater like that, I have a minor freak out in my chair.
Just like Shelley Winters.
Yep.
So, overall, have you seen Poseidon Adventure?
Yeah, I want to know your thoughts on this one. And if you've seen that and the remake, I haven't seen the remake since it came out, so I can't really speak much to
that. That had Kurt Russell in it, right?
Yep, Kurt Russell, Richard Dreyfuss. Oh, another group of yellers that we could probably get to one day.
Yeah, someone said, can you shout? Yeah.
I want to know your thoughts on it as well. Like, do you think the film stands up today? I mean, it's, 1972, so it's almost 50 years old. I think the film still holds up pretty darn well. I was captivated the entire time. Do you agree, or do you think it's kind of a bit of a downer now? Let us know in the comment section down below. And don't forget, you can also like this video, and it helps us out really, really quite a bit when it comes to YouTube algorithms. Another thing you can do if you really want to get involved in the conversation is check out our Patreon. Patreon.com/KyleNickOnFilm. The link is down in the description. You don't even have to type it, just click it. Check it out and see how you can help support independent content creators for as low as $1 a month. And hey, don't forget to subscribe. You want to be a part of it.
Yeah, join the team. You can pick out some of the movies or some of the disaster movies that we can watch.
Yeah, definitely. So we've got 3 more slots left in this month of disaster films. What are we going to pick? I don't know. We spent some time on a boat. Maybe we'll spend some time on land next time.
You got many options. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So once again, guys, I'm Kyle Goethe. You can find all my film reviews on goatfilmreviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. Once again, warning, be careful of the maiden voyage of Andy Shep.